The sky above six burned orange and black. Ships fell from the clouds like dying birds. The ground shook with explosions that never seemed to stop. Stood on a hill and watched his world die. He was massive, even for a. His kind looked like wolves that had learned to walk on two legs and grown to 8 feet tall. They had fur the color of storm clouds, eyes like molten gold, and claws that could cut through metal. For 10,000 years, they had been the rulers of this planet. They feared nothing. Until the came. The invaders looked like insects made into nightmares. They stood even taller than, with hard shells covering their bodies and arms that ended in blades instead of hands. They came in ships that blocked out the sun. They came in numbers that no one could count. They came to take everything. Turned his head and looked at the female standing beside him, his mate, his soul. They did not love the way humans did. Their bond was deeper. When a chose a mate, their minds connected in a way that could never be broken. They could feel each other's emotions. They could share thoughts without speaking. They became one being in two bodies. His fur was silver, rare and beautiful. Her eyes held the same fire that burned in his heart. She had fought beside him in 20 battles. She had given him 3 cubs just weeks ago. She was everything. "They are breaking through the eastern line," she said. Her voice was calm. It was always calm. "I know," replied. Through their bond he felt her worry, not for herself, never for herself, for the cubs. Their children were hidden in a den beneath the old temple. 3 tiny lives named, and they were too young to walk, too young to fight, too young to understand why the world was ending. "Go to them," said. Shook her head. "My place is beside you. Your place is with our children. If we fall here, someone must." A sound cut through the air. It was wrong. It made its bones hurt. They were using their new weapon, the one that attacked the mind. Made a small sound. Her hand went to her head. "No," whispered. The weapon was designed to break bonds. The enemy had learned their greatest strength was also their greatest weakness. Kill one bonded mate and the other would go mad with grief. The death madness, their people called it, a fate worse than dying. Fell to her knees. Blood came from her nose. Her golden eyes looked up at, and he saw something terrible in them, understanding. "They hit me," she said. "The weapon, I can feel it. My mind is breaking." Dropped beside her. He grabbed her shoulders. Through their bond he felt her pain. It was like fire eating her thoughts. The weapon was killing her slowly, and when she died, the bond would drag him into madness. "Fight it," he begged. "Please fight it." "I cannot win this battle, my love." Her voice was getting weaker. "But I can save you from following me." "What are you?" Pressed her forehead to his. For one perfect moment their minds touched completely. He felt her love, vast as oceans. He felt her courage, hard as mountain stone. He felt her choice. She was going to break their bond herself, before the weapon killed her, before the death madness could take him. "No," said. "No, no, no." "Protect our cubs," whispered. "Live for them, fight for them, remember me." She pushed. The bond shattered. Had never known silence like this. His whole life had been there, a warm presence in his mind, a light that never went dark. Now there was nothing, just empty space where she used to be. Smiled at him one last time. Then the light left her eyes. Threw back his head and howled. The sound was so loud, so full of pain, that the battle around them stopped, and alike turned to look. For one frozen moment nothing moved. Then the charge toward the old temple, toward the den, toward his cubs. Tried to run. He tried to fight. But there were too many enemies. They pushed him back. They pushed everyone back. He could only watch as the invaders swarmed over the place where his children hid. Far away, on a ridge overlooking the valley, a human soldier named Park watched through his scope. Was not tall, he was not strong. Compared to, and he was small and soft. His species had no claws, no armor, no special powers. Humans were known in the galaxy as persistent hunters. They could walk long distances. They could survive in many environments. They were not known as warriors. His squad had been sent to evacuate civilians, 7 humans with basic weapons. They were not supposed to fight. The radio on his shoulder crackled. A voice spoke in broken words. 3 cubs, den under old temple, position lost. No forces can reach. Looked at his squad. The youngest, the farm boy, the medic, and 2 others. They looked back at him. "We're going in," said. No one argued. They started running toward the fire. The fires were not normal fires. They burned blue and green. They ate through stone like water through paper. The air was thick with poison smoke that made every breath feel like swallowing glass. I would die in this smoke within minutes. Their lungs were made for clean mountain air. This poison would kill them fast. Humans were different. Pulled the cloth mask over his face. It was not enough. Not really. But humans had survived worse. His ancestors had breathed factory smoke and volcanic ash and the dust of dead cities. They had learned to suffer and keep moving. "Stay low," he told his squad. "The smoke rises. Better air near the ground." They crawled through the burning streets. Buildings collapsed around them. The heat was so strong that felt his skin beginning to blister. The youngest made a small sound of pain but did not stop moving. "How much farther?" asked. His voice was rough from the smoke. 200 meters, maybe less." They found the temple by following the bodies. Dead warriors lay everywhere, cut down by blades. Some of them still held their weapons. Their golden eyes stared at nothing. The entrance to the den was hidden behind a broken wall. They had not found it yet. They were still searching, their blade arms cutting through rubble, their strange clicking language filling the air. 7 of them whispered, "We cannot fight 7. "We don't need to fight them," said. "We need to move faster than them." He pointed to a crack in the wall, almost too small for humans. But almost was not the same as impossible. One by one they squeezed through, got stuck halfway, his shoulders too wide, and grabbed his arms and pulled until something popped. Bit his lip hard enough to bleed, but he did not scream. Screaming would bring the enemy. The den was dark and cool. After the fires outside, it felt like stepping into another world. Turned on his flashlight. 3 small shapes huddled in the corner. The cubs were beautiful, even covered in dirt and shaking with fear. They had soft gray fur and eyes that caught the light like golden mirrors. The biggest one bared his tiny teeth and growled. The sound was almost cute. Almost. Behind them lay a silver-furred body, the mother. She had died protecting them. "Easy," said. He stepped forward slowly. Back home on his farm, he had calmed frightened animals many times. He knew that fear made even small creatures dangerous. "Easy, little ones. We are not here to hurt you." The cubs did not understand his words, but they understood his voice. Soft, gentle, safe. The smallest cub stopped growling first. She looked at with eyes too big for her face. Then she looked at who was kneeling beside her. Reached out her hand, sniffed it. Then slowly the cub pressed her head against his palm. "We need to go," said. "Now." They wrapped the cubs in emergency blankets. Went too. The middle child went too. The cubs were heavy, almost 20 kilograms each, but humans were built to carry weight. Their bodies were designed for long journeys with heavy loads. They went out a different way, through tunnels that led away from the temple. But they were everywhere now. The invaders had spread through the city like water through cracks. They almost made it. The first appeared from behind a fallen building, then another, then 4 more. 6 warriors, each one twice as tall as any human, with armor that bullets could barely scratch. Looked at his squad, he looked at the cubs in their arms, he made a choice. "You take the cubs and run, head for the mountains, don't stop for anything." "Sergeant." "That's an order." His eyes were wet, but she nodded. She turned and ran, clutched tight to her chest, and followed. Handed to you two, get them out. Then he turned to face the With at his side. This is stupid, said. He raised his weapon anyway. Very stupid, agreed. They attacked. Humans were not strong. Humans were not fast, but humans were something else. They were stubborn. They refused to die when they should. Shot one in the eye, the only weak point in their armor. Threw a grenade that sent two more stumbling. They used the burning buildings for cover. They used the smoke to hide. They fought like cornered animals, desperate and vicious. A blade cut across shoulder. The wound was deep enough to see bone. He kept fighting. He picked up a piece of metal pipe and swung it at a head. Ran out of bullets. He flipped his rifle around and used it as a club. When that broke, he used his fists. One by one they fell. Died with his hands around a throat. Died trying to shield from a killing blow. And the last one standing died strangling an enemy warrior while three others tore into his body. But by then the cubs were a kilometer away and still moving. The humans had bought them time with the only currency that mattered: their lives. The mountains rose like white giants against the gray sky. Snow fell in sheets so thick that could barely see her own hands. The wind cut through her clothes like frozen knives. They had been walking for 3 days. How much farther? Asked. Her voice was weak. The cough that had started yesterday was getting worse. Each breath sounded like something breaking inside her chest. I don't know, admitted, but we keep moving, that's all we can do. They could not follow them here. The insect warriors needed warmth to survive. The cold slowed their blood. The ice would kill them, but the cold was trying to kill the humans too. Walked in front, breaking a path through the snow. He had lost 3 toes to frostbite on the 2nd day. He had cut them off himself with his knife because dead flesh would turn poisonous if left alone. He had not complained. He had simply wrapped his foot and kept walking. Humans were strange creatures. They could not survive the cold like some species. They could not ignore it like others, but they could suffer through it. They could hurt and bleed and freeze and still put one foot in front of the other. The cubs were getting weaker. Young needed their mother's milk for the first months of life. Nothing else would do, but their mother was dead and there was no milk. Had tried to make food from their emergency supplies. She had studied alien biology before the war. She knew what nutrients bodies needed. The paste she made was gray and smelled terrible, but the cubs ate it. It kept them alive. All except the smallest cub had stopped eating on the 3rd day. She lay against chest and made small, sad sounds. Her eyes were dull. Her fur was cold. What's wrong with her? Asked. She's dying, said. The words hurt to speak, but not from hunger, from loneliness. Cubs bonded to their parents through their minds. It was the same bond that adult mates shared, but simpler. A cub needed to feel their parents' presence. Without it, they lost the will to live. Smother was dead. Her father was somewhere far away, maybe dead too. In her tiny mind, she was completely alone. There has to be something we can do, said. Looked down at the cub in her arms. His golden eyes looked back, filled with a sadness too big for such a small creature. In that moment, made a decision. She did not know if it would work. Humans were not supposed to be psychic. They could not form mind bonds like the. But humans were also not supposed to cross burning cities or frozen mountains. They were not supposed to survive what they had survived. Closed her eyes. She thought about warmth. She thought about safety. She thought about the feeling of being held and protected and loved. She pushed these thoughts outward, toward the tiny mind she could somehow sense in her arms. You are not alone, she thought. I am here. I will not leave you. Nothing happened. Then made a sound. It was not a whimper. It was not a cry. It was something had never heard before. A soft rumbling from deep in the cub's chest. A purr. Pressed closer to, her eyes grew brighter. Her fur grew warmer. What did you do? Asked. I don't know, said, but she could feel something now. a small presence in her mind, like a candle flame in a dark room, like a child holding her hand. "I think," said slowly, "you just became her mother." They walked for 4 more days. The snow never stopped. The cold never eased. His cough got worse until she could barely breathe. His wounded foot became infected. His skin turned gray and he shook with fever. But they kept walking, carried against her heart. The bond between them grew stronger every day. She could feel the cub's hunger, her fear, her small hopes, and could feel her. The cub drew strength from stubborn refusal to stop. On the 7th day fell. "Get up," said she. Grabbed his arm. "Get up, we're almost there." "I can't feel my legs," said. His voice was calm, too calm. "Leave me, take the cubs." "No," handed to. Then she bent down and pulled his arm over her shoulder. "We don't leave anyone. I'll slow you down. Then we'll be slow." They walked, on one side of on the other, 3 humans barely able to stand, carrying 3 alien cubs through a frozen hell. Near sunset stopped. "Look," she whispered. In the distance, barely visible through the snow, colored banners flew from tall poles. Banners, the marks of the northern clans. They had made it. Wanted to cry, she wanted to laugh, she wanted to fall down and never get up again. Instead, she tightened her grip on and took another step. "Almost there," she said, "just a little farther." Behind them, the mountains stood silent and cold. They had tried to kill these small, soft humans. They had failed. Humans were not the strongest. They were not the toughest. But they were something that the mountains and the cold and the fire could not understand. They simply refused to stop. Had not slept in 7 days. Since died, he had known nothing but rage. He had led charge after charge against the lines. He had killed so many enemies that his fur was stained dark with their blood. He had fought like a creature with nothing left to lose. Because he had nothing left to lose. His cubs were dead. That was what the scouts had told him. The den had fallen. No survivors. His children had been taken from him the same day he lost their mother. The death madness had not claimed him, had saved him from that, but something worse had taken its place. An emptiness. A cold that lived inside his chest where his heart used to be. His warriors whispered about him when they thought he could not hear. They said his soul had died with his mate. They said he was not leading them anymore. He was just looking for a battle that would finally kill him. They were right. Then the scouts brought news that made no sense. 3 humans, the young said. His voice shook. He was afraid of his alpha now. Everyone was. Coming from the mountains, they are carrying something, we think. We think they might be cubs. Did not remember running. One moment he was standing in the command tent. The next he was racing across the snow faster than he had ever run before. He saw them from a distance first. 3 small figures struggling through the white. They were slow. They were barely moving, but they were moving. Came closer. His heart, the one he thought was dead, began to beat again. Humans, 3 humans, wrapped in shiny emergency blankets that did almost nothing against the cold. Their skin was damaged by frostbite. Their bodies shook with cold and fever. One of them could not walk on his own. The other 2 were holding him up. And in their arms, wrapped in more blankets, 3 small shapes with gray fur. His cubs. His cubs were alive. The male human saw first. Even dying, even barely able to stand, the human stepped in front of the females. His hands made fists. His eyes showed no fear. He could not possibly fight an alpha. He was half frozen and weaponless and so small that could have crushed him with one hand. But he was clearly planning to try. "The cubs," the human said. His translation device crackled with static. "Safe, all 3, please." Then he collapsed into the snow, stepped over him, and approached the female holding. His daughter looked at him. She knew him. He could see the recognition in her golden eyes. She made the sound that cubs make when they see their father. But she did not reach for him. Instead, she pressed closer to the human female. She buried her face against the human's chest and made a sound of contentment. Stopped, he did not understand. Why would his cub choose a stranger over her own father? Then he looked at the human female, really looked at her. She was small and weak and damaged by the cold. Her fingers were black with frostbite. Her lips were cracked and bleeding. Ice hung from her hair like tiny crystals. But her eyes were fierce, and when she looked at, they were filled with love. She bonded to me, the female said. Her voice was barely a whisper. I don't know how, I'm sorry, She was dying, she needed someone, I couldn't let her die. Felt something break inside him. Not his heart this time, something else. The wall of ice and rage that he had built to survive losing everything. Your pack, he said. The words came hard. He had not spoken gently in 7 days. Where is your pack? The human female met his eyes. Tears ran down her face, freezing against her skin, but her voice did not shake. They didn't make it, they bought us time. Understood. He understood that 4 humans had died so that 3 cubs could live. He understood that these 3 survivors had walked through fire and ice carrying children who were not their own. He understood that this small, weak female had somehow formed a bond with his daughter and kept her alive through nothing but love and stubbornness. He understood what humans were. Slowly, the great alpha of the northern clans went down on one knee. The snow soaked through his fur, but he did not care. He lowered his head until his forehead touched the human female's forehead. It was the gesture used for their most honored dead. It was the highest respect one warrior could show another. Then your pack, said, was worthy of song. The human female made a sound between a laugh and a sob. They really were. Around them, warriors had gathered. They watched in silence as their alpha knelt before a human. They saw the cubs in human arms. They saw the truth written in blood and frostbite and love. These small creatures had done what warriors could not. They had saved the alpha's children. Bring healers, commanded. His voice was strong again, alive again. These humans are heroes of our people. Treat them as our own blood. He stood and gently took from the arms of the unconscious male. His son was thin and weak, but alive, breathing. His eyes were open and looking at his father with something like hope. I thought I lost you, whispered. I thought I lost everything. Then he looked at the human female still holding. His daughter was not reaching for him. She was content where she was. For the first time in 7 days, smiled. Perhaps he had not lost everything after all. 5 years had passed since the burning of 6. They were gone now, driven back to their home worlds by an alliance that no one had expected. The clans who had always fought alone had found new partners, human partners. It turned out that humans made excellent allies. They could fight in any environment, burning deserts, frozen mountains, poisoned atmospheres, places where other species died. Humans somehow survived. They were not the strongest warriors, but they were the most stubborn. They simply refused to accept defeat. And when children were in danger, they became something else entirely, something that even alphas had learned to respect. Stood on a hill overlooking the rebuilt city. Where rubble had once filled the streets, new buildings rose tall and strong. Where bodies had once lain, gardens now grew. His people had survived. They had healed. He had healed too, mostly. Some nights he still reached across the bed for. Some nights he still felt the empty space in his mind where she used to live. The grief would never fully leave him, but it no longer controlled him. A voice called from behind him, "Father." Turned and saw running up the hill. His son was almost full-grown now, standing nearly as tall as himself. He moved with the strength and speed of a warrior born. The ceremony is starting soon, said. Everyone is waiting. I know, I was just remembering. Stood beside his father and looked at the city below. I don't remember much about that day. I remember fire, I remember being scared, and I remember human hands, gentle hands carrying me. Sergeant Park said, "He carried you out of the fire." I wish I could have thanked him. You thank him every day you live. They walked down the hill together. The ceremony ground was filled with people. Warriors stood in their best armor. Human soldiers stood in their dress uniforms. Representatives from a dozen other species had come to witness this day. A platform had been built at the center of the ground. On it stood a covered shape, tall and wide. The monument was already there, standing near the front. She looked different from the frozen, dying woman she had been 5 years ago. Her hair was longer now, touched with gray at the temples. She wore clothing instead of human military gear. Around her neck hung the mark of the Northern clan, showing that she had been adopted as one of their own. Beside her stood. His daughter had grown into a beautiful young. Her fur was silver like her mother's. Her eyes held the same fire. But when she was frightened or happy or needed comfort, she still reached for first. The bond between them had never broken. Scientists from 12 different species had studied it. None of them could explain how a human had formed a psychic connection with a. None of them needed to. The bond existed. That was enough. Second mother said, using the word for a parent who was not of blood but of choice. "Are you ready?" Smiled, "I think so." Near them stood the middle child. He had grown quiet and thoughtful. He spent his days in the medical halls, studying healing arts. His dream was to create medicines that worked for both humans and. His first success had been a nutrient paste for young, the same paste that had kept him alive in the mountains. Stood with her cough had never fully healed. The frozen air had damaged her lungs forever, but she was alive. She was here. That was what mattered. Stood at the back of the crowd. He walked with a cane now. The frostbite had taken more than his toes in the end. But when young warriors asked about his limp, he just smiled and said some things were worth losing a few pieces for. Stepped onto the platform. The crowd fell silent. He looked out at the faces before him, and humans standing side by side. Two species that had been strangers 5 years ago. Now they were something more. "We thought we knew what strength was," began. His voice carried across the crowd. "We were the apex predators, lords of 6 for 10,000 years. We feared nothing." He paused. "We were wrong. When the came, we learned that strength alone was not enough. We fell. Our warriors died. Our city burned. And in our darkest hour, when all hope seemed lost, help came from an unexpected place." He gestured toward the covered monument. 7 humans came to our world. They were not strong like us. They could not run like us. They could not fight like us. By every measure we knew they were weak. But they walked into fire to save children who were not their own. They climbed through ice that should have killed them. And when 4 of them fell, the other 3 kept walking. They carried our young on their backs and refused to stop, refused to die, refused to let anything stand between them and their duty. Pulled the cover from the monument. The crowd gasped. The statue was carved from white stone. It showed 3 human figures walking through a snowstorm. Their faces were turned forward. Their backs were bent with weight. And in their arms, 3 cubs slept peacefully. At the base of the statue, carved in both human letters and script, were 3 names: Park, Shin, No. And below the names, a single line. "They carried us home." Was crying. So was around them humans and wept together. Raised his voice one final time. "We have a word for beings who would give their lives for cubs not their own, who would walk through fire and ice, who would stand against death itself for the sake of others. We call them pack." He looked at every human in the crowd. "Humans are pack." The cheering started then. It did not stop for a long time. And in the northern settlement, in a small house overlooking the rebuilt city, a silver-furred young named pressed close to her human mother and listened to the sound of 2 peoples becoming one family. The fire and ice had tried to destroy them. Instead, it had forged something new, something unbreakable, something eternal. Home,